So my name's Steve Benham. Thank you for joining this webinar today, which is the first in a series which will take us from where we are today in FP&A processes through a number of different statuses up to hopefully the full value-adding FP&A processes. So there will be subsequent webinars in this series. I'm a director of Profit and I'm the UK practice lead within Profit and my background is about 20 years as a CFO of medium-sized companies on the whole, and then another 25 years in doing various roles ranging from commercial to delivery in the sort of enterprise performance management type delivery. So we'll move on. What we're going to cover today is minimize something. Let's look at the FP&A processes and examine whether they're wasting value or whether they're value adding or whether there's something in between. We'll talk today about how to move these processes from wasting a lot of money to being pretty efficient. And then today we'll wrap up with a quick demonstration of an accelerator that we've built in Anaplan, which is our preferred enterprise performance management or FP&A tool. And then we'll give just a little bit about Profit and. Yes, we would if I could get the down button to work on this thing. There we go. So just looking at this diagram, we define FP&A processes as, on the whole, there are 4 of them. The first and main one is just reporting historic performance. That's actual management reporting. Then planning for the future. In most businesses, that's at least a budget and often 2, 3, 5-year planning. And then one that not many finance departments really do in a routine way is predicting future performance. That's forecasts. And finally, running scenarios, which most CFOs that I talk to, that's one of the key things that they struggle to do. They'd like to be doing a lot more time doing the A of FP&A, that is analysis, and running scenarios is really a future-looking piece of analysis. And then if we look at the sort of the movement, let's say, from finance processes which are wasting value, wasting money, these are the sort of typical attributes that they have. So if we look at the reporting historic performance process, there's typically enormous amount of data transfer, a lot of aggregation, transformation and calculation, all done in spreadsheets, multiple spreadsheets. And a very typical sort of attribute of this is the variance analysis commentary really talks about correcting errors more than it does explain the reason for the business being the way it is. Just a little story on that. So years ago, when I was acting as a CFO, I proudly took some management accounts to my CEO, where it was talking about the fact that we've over and under accrued various overheads. And he said to me, "Steve, I really don't want you to talk to me about accounting errors," which is effectively what an accrual is. I want you to give me your best view of the future. Annual budgets, a classic, it's very, very common. And we're working with a client now who is starting their budget cycle for 2021 in July. So there's a 6-month budget cycle. Forecasts, often the best that finance departments can do is do year to go and that is the actuals plus the remaining months of the financial year. And I have to say, I do question when companies do 11 months actuals and 1 month's year to go. It seems a bit of a wasted effort to me, that. And finally, when it comes to scenarios, really it's a massive effort. Very poor quality data available, and it often takes a long time to answer a key question from the executive team. I know from my own experience that quite often, in order to deliver any answer at all, you have to make some pretty unreliable assumptions on the data. If we then, what I want to talk about today is how to move away from this waste of effort and time and try and get the processes more efficient. So the key thing in the actuals process is automating, having a tool and having automation of data integration, calculations and reports. That is to say, the data integration, the calculations and the reports are all in one single tool. With annual budgets, a 1 to 2 month cycle, it should be more than enough, and in the best companies it's down to about 2 or 3 weeks. And similarly, we would expect to be able to produce quarterly rolling forecasts. And with scenarios, there should be at least some capability to explain what various scenarios are going to look like by using volumetric or driver data and some unit costs. And finally, what does good look like? What does the best look like? In the best, the management reporting can actually explain what is happening with the numbers. That's to say, they can say that this cause, maybe a supplier has increased their prices, has had this effect on the profitability, and indeed will have further effect in the future. In budgets, the best companies use budget simply as a replacement of year 2 of the plan, and then add another year on to their planning. And I talk a lot about finance departments needing to be fortune tellers, and that's where we come to the forecasting process. This is really, in my opinion, where finance departments need to focus on forecasting and predicting the future. And at that point, we begin to get predictive analysis coming in, particularly in the sales forecasting, where people are using the source systems for sales management to predict what the sales in the future are going to be. And in terms of scenarios, very fast driver-based scenarios are really what the best companies are doing. So let's move on. So this is what the typical as-is components of I think one of the processes, which is to report actual performance, looks like. Nearly all companies have general ledger as a source system, and quite often there are other transaction systems which are sources for data. And nearly all finance departments produce some form of executive pack, some summary, although I have seen executive reports which are 40 pages and about 2 million lines being sent out to the directors. Typically that's not the case, so people do summaries, and often that exec pack is produced in some way in PDF. The problem is between the two, where we'll get maybe a pre-formatted P&L account, which is produced by the general ledger system. We'll then maybe get some CSV format exports, such as the trial balance, going out of the ledger system. And all of that stuff will have to be transformed, often through multiple spreadsheets on different people's desktops, into a P&L balance sheet and cash flow. On top of that, there'll be some non-accounting data, maybe some maintenance reports, some safety reports, or some initiatives that are going on in the business, which may be extracted from other source systems. That also has to be reformatted. Often there's a lot of manual input into sort of, again, spreadsheets on people's desktops. And it all gets circulated by email into some poor finance team who's got to try and put all this stuff together in a way. And it all takes far too long, typically 5 to 10 days, sometimes more. And it has an enormous amount of manual effort. And the worst part is the risk of errors, where numbers are being transposed from one spreadsheet to another. And again, another really harmful thing to the credibility of finance is there is absolutely no time for any creative or intelligent analysis. But what should it look like? Well, we use, as I mentioned earlier, a tool called Anaplan. And Anaplan integrates most of the all of the components. It has a calculation model in the center of it. It enables data loading from multiple source systems and transformation, and this is all native to the Anaplan software. And the reporting, web-based reporting, is fully integrated. So really, by loading data, or pulling data, in fact, from Anaplan, so pulling into Anaplan from a general ledger system and from other transaction systems, at the click of a button almost, you can produce integrated P&L balance sheet, cash flows, KPIs and scorecards in an executive pack. There is also, because of the cloud capability, the ability to manually input numbers, maybe if they're not held in transaction systems or it's not worth the effort to connect to it, they can be manually input to the model. And we call that our accelerator. And on top of that, best practice is, in our opinion, is to create a data mart for FP&A data, so that there's no duplication, it's well organized and can be used for multiple use cases beyond just monthly management accounting reporting. Moving on to process, just taking this example of, say, a next year budget process. This is actually a real example from one of our clients, which we're now moved on from here, I'm pleased to say. But they started their budgeting process in July. This is for a January to December year. So the budget's January to December the following year. They start in July and they completely rebuild multiple budget workbooks. And they then adjust them for some top-down assumptions, and they manually populate the next year budget numbers from current year actuals. At that point, they're in a position to at least show it to the CFO. So that's 2 to 3 months into the process, they're in a position to show some numbers for the following year to the CFO. They then go through a process of discussing and amending that with departmental managers, and then maybe 4 months into the process, they're ready to present the numbers which have been reviewed by the CFO to present them to the board. In their case, they did it in November with the option to drift on into December. So with using Anaplan technology, sorry, I think just deal with, I think it's fairly clear that this process is far too long. It takes far too much effort. It has spreadsheets all over the business in departmental silos, and that is the business of transferring data from one desktop spreadsheet to another involves very often lots and lots of errors, often to do with version control. And again, most of the effort is spent just creating a budget and very little time available for analysis. So what should it look like? This is the same client again. We've got the process now down to, we think, about 6 weeks. And within 2 weeks, we've copied the latest forecast, made any modifications to it, and have discussed it with the CFO so that the CFO is happy for the interaction with the departments to carry on. And within 4 weeks, there's a budget ready to go for approval by the board. If I'm honest, if in companies that are doing rolling forecasts, that's, for instance, adding on a quarter every quarter or a month every month, so they're looking at least 12 months ahead, this budget process is really just a repetition of a forecast with a few budget assumptions confirmed, and it should be able to get this process down to 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm going to just take a bit of a breath there. I'm going to go and just move on to show you the Anaplan software, the accelerator in the software. It's going to focus on largely on the reports that you can see. The important thing to remember about this is been built as something that can be installed on any client site, and it satisfies a lot of typical client requirements, but it is pretty easy to tailor it. And actually the key functionality in it is in the automation that goes on to bring data out of the source systems and do all the transformation within and mapping within Anaplan to produce the executive reports and more detailed reports, all integrated in Anaplan. So I'm just going to come out of presentation mode a second and go to here. So I've already logged in, and it may ask me to log in again because I haven't touched it for a few minutes. But as you can see, there's a long list here, which could be a bit confusing. So this is gone into Profitan's dedicated workspace, and the accelerator model is the only ones we're looking at today. In fact, to start with, we're going to look at the reporting, which is in something called Anaplan called the apps. And it's asked me to sign in again. Fantastic. So I've gone through a couple of steps there because we've got quite a lot of models that we use, but in a client system, there would be a landing page, maybe the executive landing page, and reporting users such as the executive team would log straight away to a screen like this. And what you can see here is, so this is straight out of our accelerator. It's standard, but it can be very easily tailored to specific requirements. So it is pre-formatted, but there's some specific attributes of this. So we've designed a P&L summary which has actual versus budget reporting across month, year to date, and full year. And we've also got a balance sheet trend in this case. And we've also got cash flow. And those three aspects of the financial reporting are all fully integrated, which may sound obvious to most finance people, but actually it surprises me how few finance departments actually have integrated, have the balance sheet and cash flow integrated in their monthly reporting. P&L reporting is common, of course, but the integration into the balance sheet and the cash flow is often not. And we've got all the normal functionality in a sort of modern reporting tool that you'd expect. We can slice and dice. We can slice by picking different responsibilities or different versions. Here we have budget and actual. And we can also, this is, set up an almost unlimited number of periods. So for instance, if I were to pick a later period in 20, just go for January. Okay, we'll see these numbers at the top page, and what we have, and I personally think this is very important, that finance departments have their commentary connected to the numbers they're reporting on, and they and you can put a brief commentary in like this, and this commentary is retained against the month. So it's retained at the month level, so there's always a history available to users of the commentary. Of course, everybody would want to see the detail that backs up some of these numbers, so we have the detailed reports available, same sort of principle where we have a monthly trend analysis. And by the way, the columns on these reports can be configured by the end user in a sort of a tick box where you select the version, you select the periods that you want to appear on the reports. And we have the trend reports and the comparison with budget reports here. And we have the same again for balance sheet and cash flow. So the question which it could be coming to the finance people's mind is, well, we've got thousands of accounts and we're only showing maybe 20 or 30 here, which is certainly true. So as our behind the scenes in the data loading, and I'll just come back to that at the end of this demo, basically we can load as many accounts, as many cost centers, customers and products as you want. And then behind the scenes, there's currently a mapping to these sorts of headings and also to the summary. So that's out of the box, but it's also pretty quick and easy to tailor the way these reports look to suit your local requirements. Okay, so we've also included in this some sales analysis. and we have sales analysis by product, by customer, and by cost center or department. It is multidimensional, so if I just move this down to look at the customer, and then I select, so you've got a list of customers on the rows. If I select a product group such as sheets, we can see that the graph is changing. Unfortunately, somebody's loaded the same proportions of data in for every product, which we're going to change. But as you can see, we can basically slice on customers in that way, and on the product one you can slice by customer. So you've got the ability to do quite a lot of analysis. And we've also got on this as standard like a product trend, and it's a pretty sophisticated reporting tool, so we can, for instance, just switch off parts of that graph if a particular user doesn't want to see that. And finally, if we can just prove the point, I can select just the sales department, say, and I think from memory there's only data in 1 year for this one. No, not that one. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to, so that's really the reporting end of it, which you can see is quite comprehensive, but easy to tailor. I'm now going to go to the actual data part of it. So I'm back to the screen we started on. And here I'm going to go into this data model, which we call the data hub. And I'm going to try and improve that a little bit. Let's make it a bit bigger. Yeah, I think that's a bit better. Just easier to read. So I'm not expecting you to read all of this, but for the data hub, everything really is automated and pre-formatted. But there are some detailed instructions for loading data here, which we've preset accounts and the responsibility hierarchy, let's call it, the cost centers and the departments to 3 levels, and we have customer hierarchy being imported and a product hierarchy. And really all the end user has to do is to follow these instructions carefully, and they will be able to load data from their general ledger or another source system into Anaplan, and it will then work away in seconds behind the scene and produce the reports we saw earlier. So I'm just going to take a quick look at just this, go down a level and look at the loading of hierarchies. So again, detailed instructions on what to do. Loading each hierarchy is a 3-step process. First of all, we load the raw data from a file, or this could actually be pulled. We could set a pull up using Anaplan from the source system. So we just schedule a load and it'll pull it in. And then these grey pieces here will then be populated with the hierarchy. But we've also realized that sometimes the hierarchies are incomplete, or they need modification for reporting purposes. So we can do that in this second stage, where we can literally type in changes, or we might have new hierarchy which doesn't have, or sorry, new children in the hierarchy which haven't been assigned to parents. So we can just edit this using normal copy paste type tools, or just typing in to complete a hierarchy. And then the third stage is to build that hierarchy in Anaplan so that it then can be used in a multi-dimensional way by all the reporting. So that what you were looking at there was simply the cost center or department hierarchy load. It's empty at the moment because it's, it has to be clear before we can load a new file in. And then we have accounts there, customers and product, all to the same structure. So really, that's all I want to do today on the demonstration. I'm going to go back to my presentation and just to recap a bit. So just to recap what we've seen there. First of all, financial management reporting is the monthly management accounts. We use this accelerator on nearly all our clients as at least a start point for getting the financial management reporting sorted out very quickly. Often we strip out days and days of work effort out of the financial management reporting process, and that in turn immediately starts to give the finance department time to analyse and therefore add value. It's possible because it replaces, almost without exception, a very large number of spreadsheets which are not connected in any way. They just have to be, things have to be copy pasted, they have to be sorted, they have sometimes to be edited, and they're often on different people, different desktops. Fundamentally, we're automating everything from the data source through to production of the financial reports. From that foundation stone of financial management reporting, it's really a short step, a small investment to add in the next year's budget process, a year to go reporting process, year to go forecasting process, rolling forecasts, and in then to start to think about what we call connected planning, or Anaplan calls connected planning. So in two clients at the moment, we have moved them very quickly from financial management reporting into connected planning. So one client is has a full production planning system with detailed bill of materials for every component, every production process. It plans the supply chain across 3 countries and 3 factories. There's 16 steps in the process, and any change in the production planning can immediately be seen in a 5-year financial forecast, P&L, balance sheet and cash flow. In another client, we're just going live now with sales forecasting, which is drawing data from Salesforce.com, which is basically drawing opportunities from Salesforce.com and applying various rules to those. This is a global business, by the way, with about 50 different countries. And that then is populating a 3-year financial plan, which is updated in minutes each time the sales team update their forecasts. The technology, Anaplan, enables enterprise-wide and mobile reporting, so it works on mobiles and iPads and the like. And something certainly I've been struggling with for probably 25 years is getting these modeling tools to accept data entry remotely. And Anaplan also, it's just a simple set a screen up and make it available to a remote user, and they can enter data themselves, and that's particularly useful in decentralized budgeting processes. Finally, as I hope you'll agree, the executive dashboards and scorecards are pretty flexible and can be molded to the requirements of your business. So, nearly done, to be pleased to know. Just a little bit about Profit and. I haven't put all our clients up here. I've mentioned a couple of these in the stories I've just told. We work all over Europe. We're a virtual company, that's to say we have no offices, which, as you can imagine, has put us in a good place with the current crisis. And you can see from the dark blue the number of different countries that we've delivered Anaplan projects in. And that, patchwork is changing by the month. Just a little word on, say, E.ON, where we were given a zero-based budgeting model, an enormous model. It was just enormous, done by a big firm of consultants. To be fair to them, it was done very, very quickly, which is what E.ON wanted. But they were worried about the amount of disk space and the calculation time, even in Anaplan. And we managed to reduce the disk space and improve the calculation times by approximately 70% and 80% respectively in a matter of a week or two of working on their system and removing redundancy and things like that. And Fendi is interesting because they do all of their sales planning and quota allocation using Anaplan. So that's me finished. Thank you for listening. I'm going to hand back to Grace now quickly and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, Steve, there are no questions, but a common one we often get asked is, you say it's an accelerator. How much cost and time does it take to implement what you've shown?
The accelerator itself, we include it with like a fixed price offering of about £10,000 to convert the current financial management reporting, so the management accounting process, so to basically take the data that's available, push it through Anaplan, and give you reports out of the end. And in that 10 days, so most of the modelling has already been done, there is a certain amount of tailoring, and we've found that within that fixed price, we can pretty well accommodate all normal finance departments, management accounting requirements. Does that answer the question, Grace?
Yes, well, I think so. I've not seen any new questions come in while you were answering that. So,
okay, so that's,
yeah.
so shall I wrap up?
Yes, yeah.
So just to chip in if you need to, Grace.
Yeah.
So we've done that bit. So we have a number of blogs and white papers on our website, which is down at the bottom there, www.profitand.com. They range from sales performance through on to the value adding side of finance and planning and analysis. And we encourage you to come and download the ones you'd like to look at. Obviously, we're keen to promote our business and are very happy to give a more in-depth and personal demo of the accelerator. And finally, do feel free to email me directly at stevebenham@profitand.com. And I'll just leave that all there for a couple of seconds whilst you absorb that. So,
Okay, so that concludes our webinar today, and except to say thank you for attending, and thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, everybody, for coming.